My Nick says,
Right.
Wait, Scott Best.
In a recent Young Turks segment, Anna Kasparian and Sen Oer tore into MSNBC's glowing coverage of Donald Trump's Treasury pick, Scott Bessent. Sure, he's making headlines as the first openly gay nominee for the role, and yes, the media is painting it as a huge win for LGBTQ representation. But here's the kicker. Does his identity really matter when his Wall Street-friendly pro-corporate policies are set to hit everyday Americans the hardest? Instead of obsessing over his personal life, why isn't anyone asking about the cuts to social programs or the handouts to billionaires? Let's break it down.
Great, hand the country over to a corporate robber baron because he's gay and has kids just like Jonathan Capehart.
No, this is insane.
Check identity politics. Oh, Trump, you know what? You know, there were people giving us crap for supporting Trump's labor secretary, right?
Because she actually supports labor and voted in favor and co-sponsored the PRO Act. So it's about her character and what she represents.
No, Anna, we're going about it all the wrong way.
Okay, which way are we supposed to go?
Okay, so we should take Capehart's cue on this. Remember, the labor secretary nominee is Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer, Latina.
Woman.
Okay, woman. Check. Okay, we win.
That's all that matters.
We win. That's it. You have to support her for labor secretary. But almost all of cable news won't, because all of corporate interests and Chamber of Commerce are not in favor of her because she's actually pro-labor, but they are very much in favor of the candidate that Capehart's talking about, because he is a robber baron. And in that segment, I don't know if we have that portion of the clip.
Yes, we do.
Okay,
so let me. No, hold on, Jake. Hold on.
Okay, she's leading. Go ahead.
We're gonna get to who the Treasury Secretary pick is, because look, I don't care about his identity at all, to be honest with you. Lovely that he's openly gay. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But what I care more about is what he represents and what he wants to do with that position should he get confirmed. And based on who he is, it's very likely he will get confirmed easily. Now, with that in mind, later in the segment, Capehart, who's openly gay himself, he was referencing, by the way, his own husband, Nick Schmidt, and how he was even feeling conflicted because, it's Trump, but his Treasury Secretary pick is openly gay, and I kind of like that. That's exciting. Anyway, let's get to what the guest on the show had to say about this pick, because this is a Democratic strategist, and I thought what he had to say here was just amazing. Let's take a look.
Look, I think in that case, credit where it's due. I think we expect the markets to shoot up when they open in Asia here in a little bit. I think Wall Street likes the guy. It is very interesting that, yes, it is Trump and not one of our team who made that historic nomination.
That's your critique? That Democrats didn't pick an openly gay guy who's a hedge fund manager and who's totally in favor of corporatist policies that ordinary Americans hate? That's your critique, that Democrats didn't pick someone like him.
Scott Bessent's nomination as Treasury Secretary is being hailed as historic. If confirmed, he'd become the highest-ranking openly LGBTQ official in U.S. history, a milestone for representation and inclusivity. But the celebration hasn't been without controversy. Anna Kasparian and SIGA argue that Bessent's deep ties to Wall Street and pro-corporate interests clash sharply with the progressive values often linked to LGBTQ advocacy. The tension is heightened by the fact that Donald Trump, a figure often viewed as hostile to LGBTQ rights, is behind the nomination. This has sparked debate over whether Bessent's identity should overshadow the potential impact of his policies. Critics point to media coverage as part of the problem. MSNBC host Jonathan Cart, for example, openly criticized Trump while lauding Bessent's historic LGBTQ status, a move Kasparian and IGA see as emblematic of a broader issue by prioritizing identity over substance. The media risks glossing over Bessent's Wall Street connections and economic agenda, which may disproportionately benefit the wealthy. This pattern reflects a troubling reliance on identity politics, where milestones are celebrated at the expense of rigorous policy analysis, potentially enabling decisions that could harm the very communities they claim to champion.
But Cenk, he's a Democratic strategist. These are the guys who are giving Democratic candidates advice.
Yeah.
And they take that advice, they gobble it up, they drink the milkshake, they drink it up.
I have, they do indeed. I have one other identity politics thing we're going to do. You guys are going to love it, okay? But first, let me tell you more about Besant.
Identity politics has made people dumber in this country. Like what Capehart said there, dumb. He sounded dumb because he's not doing analysis about the policies that this Treasury Secretary pick supports. He doesn't care about that at all.
Nah, let's be honest. He loves it. He loves the pro-corporate, pro-establishment.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Wall
You're
Street
right.
stock,
You're right. You're right.
Wall Street going up. They all love it. So they're
be honest about that.
Yeah, and at MSNBC, they're trying to find a reason to support the corporate goon he's picking as Treasury Secretary. So they've found one. If you want to find a reason to be against someone, you dig and dig and dig until you find usually a sex scandal. Okay, but some sort of thing about their personal life.
Right.
If you like their pick and think, oh, this guy's going to help rob the country blind in favor of Wall Street. Oh, did you know that he's gay and has children? So now all the Trump appointees that have children we're in favor of? Is that a thing?
I didn't know that was a new identity, box to check off as a big win. But like, can we talk a little bit about who this guy is, Besant? Okay.
Yeah.
So Scott Besant is a hedge fund guy, former hedge fund manager who actually has some pretty close ties to George Soros.
Yep.
So what's interesting is a lot of Trump supporters are not in favor of this pick. But nonetheless, as the New York Times writes, Trump's selection caps an extraordinary career arc for an investor who was once a protege of the liberal billionaire philanthropist George Soros and who gave money to top Democrats, including Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and Barack Obama, a who's who of, corporate Democrats for sure. He was a big-time donor for the Democratic Party in the past. In fact, he was a big supporter of Al Gore back in 2000 when he ran for president. But he has since kind of switched parties to some extent. As Trump's secretary, he will push Congress to carry out Trump's tax cuts and call back some of these federal regulations. He's the son of a real estate developer who experienced several of his own financial booms and busts. He went to Yale University, where he was class treasurer in college. Besant reflected on the challenges of being a Southerner in New England, writing in the paper in 1981 that, quote, I was the only one in the dorm who was heartbroken when George Wallace decided not to run for president. For those of you unfamiliar with George Wallace, he was well known as someone who was against desegregation. In fact, he was quoted as saying, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
One Scott Besant's nomination for Treasury Secretary is a textbook example of the revolving door between Wall Street and government. A former hedge fund manager with close ties to financial heavyweights like George Soros, Besant has spent his career in the corporate elite. What makes his nomination striking is his political pivot. After years of donating to Democrats like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, he now lands in Donald Trump's administration. This shift raises serious questions about his priorities. Expected policies like tax cuts for the wealthy and rolling back financial regulations may please corporate boardrooms, but they spell trouble for working-class Americans already struggling in an economy tilted toward the ultra-rich anarchists. And Shankuer argue that Besant's nomination embodies the prioritization of corporate interests over the public good. Besant's pro-business record is clear. A supporter of Trump's tax cuts, deregulation, and deficit reduction, he is likely to pursue measures that widen wealth inequality. His deficit reduction plans almost certainly involve cutting social safety nets that millions of Americans rely on. This isn't just bad policy, it's another example of Wall Street's influence in Washington at the expense of ordinary people, benefiting a few while leaving the majority to fend for themselves in an increasingly unbalanced economy.
CNN now, they say that Jamie Dimon is thrilled and thinks it's an excellent pick. Well, then he must be. I mean, Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan Chase, all Republican and Democratic candidates say they might pick as Treasury Secretary. He has blessed it. So, okay, the bankers are very happy. There's apparently a guy named the CEO, his nickname is the CEO Whisperer. He sounds like a lovely guy. And he says the CEOs have whispered in his ear, we like to pick. So corporate CEOs are super happy. Gee, I wonder how badly we're going to get robbed. And then finally we get to this sentence near the top of the CNN article. Besant's pedigree as a global investor who's worked with legendary money managers and a history of supporting both Republicans and Democrats have eased the worries of business leaders and financial markets. So the Uniparty, firmly in charge, they get the Treasury Secretary pick, which is the most important pick for them because that's the one that commits the robbery. Okay, so all of the culture wars are a distraction while you guys are all getting distracted, including identity politics that Capehart there is so excited about. And while you guys are going, yay, he's gay, or she's this, or he's that, they're taking all the money out the back door. Okay, so that's why they're all ecstatic about this today. And finally, if I'm going to do the same dumbass identity politics, I would say, you know what? Dr. Oz is the first Turkish American in a major role in American government. And no matter how much I disagree about cutting Medicaid or Medicare or any of his other, miracle cures on TV.
Both Democrats and Republicans have become experts at using identity politics to deflect attention from the policy's nominees actually represent. Celebrating a nominee's gender, race, or sexual orientation often shifts focus away from critical scrutiny of their economic or social agenda. This isn't just a partisan problem, it's systemic, amplified by media outlets like CNN and MSNBC. On these platforms, nominees are often framed as wins for representation, while their ties to corporate and Wall Street interests go unquestioned. By highlighting symbolic milestones, the media distracts from the bigger question: what will these individuals actually do with their power? Identity politics matters for representation and inclusion, but it should never replace rigorous policy analysis. Milestones are important, but they shouldn't overshadow honest discussions about the real-world impact of these appointments. Viewers deserve more than superficial coverage. Instead of being dazzled by a nominee's historic status, we must demand transparency and accountability, asking hard questions about the policies they support and how those choices will affect ordinary Americans. The message is clear. Look beyond identity and focus on what truly matters: how these decisions shape the lives of everyday